Hey guys, Al here, Vitalize Seed. Something a little different today. I just wanted to talk about this because I think it's important. There's always talk about rough grouse populations or deer populations, and you hear people with varying opinions, right? Some people are fortunate to have areas where they have very high populations of various game species, and other areas you don't. And there's always some finger, pointing, and people are pointing the finger to, in my case, ODNR. They're the reason that there's tons of coyotes and there's no rough grouse or whatever you might have. And I've always thought it was interesting to kind of correlate some habitat changes that have happened over the last 30, 40 years, and how that compares to today. So as of right now, as you see, this is from Rough Grouse Society. I just took a screenshot here, and it shows that the population is declining in the eastern half of the United States, upwards of 50% over the last 20 years. But why is that happening? And also, why are people saying they don't see the quality as well as the number of deer, not in every area, but in a lot of areas, as say the early 2000s? A lot of people say those were the glory days. Well, I found this to be interesting. When we compare timber harvest in the eastern United States in the late 80s and 90s, which would have put really good regenerative growth or succession right around that late 90s, early 2000s, the timber harvest and rate of harvest and amount of harvesting happening was far greater. This is decreased due to environmental factors, market focuses, a larger focus on old growth forests or protecting old growth forest. And I also think some of it is because people don't understand how the ecosystem works and how there should have been natural successions. And now we have a lot of forests, say in Ohio, that are dominated by maple and hickory and beech. Maple and beech, and they should have been mostly, an oak hickory forest. And that's because of the lack of cutting, and also we've now seen increases in invasive species. So, with all of that being said, when we had heavy cutting in the 80s and 90s, within a decade, you started to see some of the highest numbers of, really good numbers of grouse, small game, things like that, but also very high numbers of deer and also very good quality in deer. And it really comes down to, because in those first 3 foot of the ground, there was so much food and so much cover and such good habitat. And it was all surrounded by large, on a macro scale, cutting. So you want to get your habitat better. I mean, I love food plots here at Vitalize Seed, but we also need to focus on timber. I would contact your NRCS offices and work with them. Contact your local foresters. I work with the state and consultative foresters, and make sure you're doing the best to provide the best habitat for the critters on your land. So hopefully you found that interesting. I certainly found that correlation to be a pretty tight one, and I think we could probably assume some causation there. So get outside, enjoy the outdoors. VitalizeSeed.com.